Hi, you're listening to Burn Beautiful, a podcast for women ready to step into their divine feminine leadership so they can create a life of joy, health, and impact beyond their wildest dreams. Here, you'll learn how to heal stress from the inside out, reclaim your vibrant health, and master your energy so you can lead powerfully without burning out and actually enjoy the moments that matter most in this one beautiful and precious life. I'm Nicole Whitaker, burnout and leadership coach, founder of Lead Up Health, and creator of the HERS method. Welcome. Hey all, and welcome back to Burn Beautiful. It is so great to have you here today, and I have a hot topic for us to dig into. If you are a leader or a parent or a woman, how do I know it's a hot topic? I have recently had the luxury of interviewing and chatting with so many brilliant, deeply caring women who are both leaders and also caretakers or parents. And every single one of them mentioned a really strong desire to be more present in their personal lives with their family, with their kids, and with themselves. I myself have a big old sign on my refrigerator that says, "Pay attention," in all caps. Right underneath my phrase, it says, "Do not yell," because about this time last year, I put it up there knowing that it was something I really wanted to work on because I wanted to show up better for my kids. I wanted to show up better as a leader, as a partner, and for myself. So let me ask you, have you ever had the experience where you've been with your child or in a meeting and realized that, sure, you were physically there, you were probably smiling and nodding right along, but your mind was someplace entirely different? Maybe you were thinking about an email you forgot to send, or wondering what in God's name you were going to make for dinner, or replaying a conversation from earlier that didn't sit right, right? It's like you're physically there, but internally gone. That was a rhetorical question because if you are human, the answer to that question is yes. Yes, you have experienced that. In fact, for many women, dare I say most, especially those in leadership or caregiving roles, that split of being present but multitasking physically or mentally has really become our mode of operation. And that is simply because we have so much flying at us, from laundry to responding to emails to our children to scheduling appointments, that the only way that we have figured out how to survive and get everything done that we need to get done is through multitasking, even though most of us understand conceptually that's actually not an effective way to operate. But we've been pulled in so many directions for so long, at least for myself. It's like I didn't even realize I had lost contact with the one thing that angers us, and that is our attention. So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about presence, what it means, why it's so freaking hard, how to reclaim it, and why reclaiming it might be the most powerful thing you can do for yourself, for your kids and your family, and for your leadership. So, this is not just presence with your kids or your team, but presence with yourself, because that is where it begins and ends. So, let's jump into it. So let's start with the definition and shared language of presence and attention so we're all on the same page. Presence is simply the state of fully inhabiting the current moment. So that's with your body, your mind, and your heart. It's not just being physically there, but it is being emotionally and mentally attuned to what or who is right in front of you. So, Dr. Amishi Jha has an excellent analogy for this. She's a neuroscientist, and she describes attention like a flashlight. So, if you think about a flashlight, you could point it very specifically at one thing up close, or you could kind of pull it back and let the light flood the room so that you can widen that focus to take in the bigger picture. So, you can experiment with this right now. Try narrowing your focus on maybe just one singular thing in the room, or even just to the sound of my voice, which, my apologies, I have a cold right now, so it sounds a little funny, but it's like shining a flashlight just on that one thing, and all of everything else, your senses, everything else in the room just dims. Then, in contrast, bring your awareness now to the entire room. So, kind of narrow or widen your visual field to take in your surroundings, engage all of your senses. And that's kind of like zooming out for some broader awareness. And so, kind of notice the difference there, but also notice your innate ability to direct your attention and how much control you truly have over your attention. Both focused attention and broader awareness are essential, and presence is really the capacity to consciously shift between them based on what we need to be doing in the moment. So, if we can control our own attention, right, if just as we practiced, then why is presence so freaking hard, especially for ambitious, high achieving women who are doing all the things? Well, when I spoke with these women in leadership, they all did talk about wanting to be more calm, having more presence, right? Really being there, right there with their family and their kids and their partner. But they also talked about how hard it is, right? How they always have these racing thoughts in the back of their mind. They're burning candles at both ends. How they feel like if they stop for just 30 minutes to relax, it's like five more things pile up. And they also talked about, yeah, sometimes in the back of their minds, it is this constant stress. But don't forget, these women are ambitious. They want to have an impact at their work. And so sometimes it's just an interesting problem that they're rolling around in their mind that, quite frankly, is more entertaining than maybe sitting there and waiting for your child to get their pajamas on, right? And the other piece of this is that this presence can be uncomfortable. One woman shared with me that she didn't understand this concept of rest. And I could 100% relate to her, by the way. I used to feel the exact same way. She was like, why? I enjoy being on, I enjoy producing, which I think is great. That's what brought her success. And she said, people talk about rest as resistance, and I just don't get it. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense because when we're present, we have to sit with what's here. And it's not necessarily all roses, right? It could be boredom. It could be something deeper, like the fact that our marriage isn't what we hoped it would be, or that our body feels sluggish, or whatever it is. So it's like at first glance, just sitting with that sounds like, why would we do that? And to build on this a bit, this is actually a survival mechanism. So Gabor Mate, I bring him up a lot. I think I just really appreciate his work. He talks about ADHD, which I do have, and how as kids, if something is happening at home, as a kid, you can't run away from home. You need your parents in your home to survive, but you also can't fight back. And so, what is a kid to do to survive or to protect? Well, tune out, right? Not pay attention. And so he attributes ADHD to this survival mechanism that kids have to utilize, especially if they're sensitive children, to self protect. And so, as adults, with all the distractions around us, it's really easy to fall into that pattern of let's just distract ourselves and not deal, right? Even if we don't technically have ADHD. So if you scroll through Instagram instead of sitting with our own experience, we get some dopamine hits, right? That's why social media is addicting. That's same even if we're just responding to Slack or Teams from work or email, right? Or even podcasts. Do keep listening to this one, but my point is, it is quite frankly so much more satisfying and stimulating to listen to somebody else talk about these things than to actually do them and be present in our own lives. As a quick example for how this has played out for me, this is just literally last night. I was getting one of my daughters ready for bed, and I caught myself checking my phone, and then I saw her see me check my phone. And the way this played out was, I obviously, no need to say, I love my daughter more than anything. And this child, she could talk. And so she was going on and on and on about like her lovies and her stuffed animals. And she was like, putting one arm in her pajamas and then doing something else, and it, quite frankly, it's boring, right? And so subconsciously, I just grabbed my phone and opened up Instagram and I caught myself. And as I caught myself, I also saw my daughter and catch myself. And of course, I'm like, the guilt came. I put my phone down, the guilt came. Oh my gosh, she thinks I'm not paying attention to her. And on the stories go, increasing stress and the guilt. And looking briefly at work, it's the same thing with paying attention here, right? Whether it's focused on a project or trying to listen to a colleague, it's like we know we want to focus and get that project done. We want to pay attention, but these self-protective mechanisms. So for the project, kicking in this concept of like I've got to do it perfectly, so they think I'm great, can lead to procrastination and not focusing our attention when we're listening and prepping about what we're going to say next, maybe to change the mind of our colleague or impress them. Again, that's a form of self preservation, but it's taking us out of the moment and taking us away from listening, even though we know it's a critical leadership skill. So before we jump in much further, I just want to invite you to accept and love that piece of you that might struggle to be present or might struggle to pay attention. It's there, it's protective, right? It's trying to keep you safe. And also, we're in a world where we're being pulled in a million directions. We can get a dopamine hit, it's right at our fingertips. And it only makes sense that we'd be drawn to that. The other reframe I want to offer you is that presence is not a moral attribute, it is a skill. This is really, really important. I'm going to say it again and talk about why this is critical. Presence is not a moral attribute, it is a skill. So this means a few things. One, your ability to stay in the present moment has nothing to do with how morally good or bad you are. So you can release the judgment. It's a skill. The other thing is that others' ability to be present for you and deeply listen has to do with their personal skill set, right? And this is an important one too. I have a friend who I'd go to lunch with her and I'd be mid-sentence and she would just start checking her phone and responding to her text. And I used to really be offended by that. But then I reminded myself, oh, it's not about me or how interesting I am. It's a skill set, right? And she has this pattern. And finally, what's great about the fact that it's a skill is that skills can be built. So we can actually strengthen our ability to be present and to focus our attention, which we're going to talk about today. So, first, I want to look at why presence is incredibly important to a life well lived. And I'm going to start with talking about why it's important as a parent. And so, in one of my favorite parenting books, only have a handful. This one is Hold On to Your Kids by Dr. Gordon Nerfield and Gabor Mate. And it explains that the most important need for a child isn't instruction or entertainment, it is attachment. And attachment comes through presence or attunement. So when we're attuned, meaning we are really in sync with their feelings and in sync with their emotions and their experience. Our child's nervous system calibrates to ours and they have that safety that they need for development. Pixar's Inside Out movie gives a great glimpse into this as an example. There's this powerful moment where Riley, the main character, breaks down after running away from home. And instead of trying to fix it or cheer her up, her parents just sit with her. They're just present and listening and holding space. And that's when Joy, which is a character, the emotion Joy, realizes that Riley's sadness didn't really need to be avoided or corrected. It needed to be witnessed. And in that moment of attunement, Riley feels safe enough to cry and ultimately then reconnect with her parents. And this movie shows that emotional presence builds core memories. And this is not through perfect parenting, mind you, but through these moments of empathy and attunement. And Dr. Becky, author of Good Inside, one of my other parenting books that I do think is really worth reading, reinforces that when a child is dysregulated or yelling, or crying, or tantruming, what they need most is a parent who can just hold steady, right? A calm nervous system that they can borrow. not advice, definitely not a lecture, not even immediate comfort necessarily, just presence. So she teaches that parents, of course, have to first regulate themselves, which requires presence and attunement to themselves to stay grounded and not reactive. And then, only then, are we available to offer this kind of safe harbor energy. This is not easy, but this is the work. And she says our job is not to stop the storm, but to be the calm in it. Now, I don't know if you have tried doing this. I have tried this and failed many a time. It is incredibly triggering to sit with your kid who is having a meltdown on multiple levels, right? On one, of course, you don't want to see your child distraught. Second, a lot of times that anger can be directed towards us, right? I hate you, or hitting, or this or that, and it's hard not to be reactive. And many times I have reacted. Um, and so I have learned that in order to do this successfully, I need to be super present and focus on regulating myself. So true presence isn't always about having the right words or that perfect response. It is about being able to sit with our child and not change things, but really hold space again and again. But of course, we cannot hold space for our kids if we have not learned how to hold space for ourselves. And this is where I know so many parents who, they care so deeply about their kids that they sometimes forget to care for themselves, to hold space for themselves when really that's the first step. So let's now talk about deep listening as a leadership superpower. So in leadership, this concept of presence isn't just like a vibe, right? It is a key lever. And research confirms this, that when leaders bring true presence and deep listening into the room, it creates trust and psychological safety, and then just stronger performance across the team. In fact, some research suggests that 70% of employees say that they would work harder just if they simply felt more heard by leadership. And lack of genuine listening is a top reason why folks are disengaged at work. So when leaders are distracted or overly directive, it signals disconnection. But when they slow down, which is super hard when you're busy, and offer real presence, even for a few moments, it sends a radically different message, right? Which is quite simply, you matter. I hear you. Um, this is what Harvard psychologist Dr. Subin David calls emotional agility, which is that capacity to stay open, curious, and grounded, even in moments of tension or uncertainty. So, deep listening is a tool that activates this agility, right? It allows leaders to meet people where they are rather than reacting from their own assumptions or urgency or ego. And that's hard. We have a ton to do. Um, Neuroscientist and leadership research Dr. Daniel Siegel calls this presence-based leadership mindsight, which is the ability to tune into your own internal state and the state of others, which is this core skill for building what he calls resonant relationships. It's so leadership is not about being in control, he says, it's about creating connection. And when leaders can cultivate this kind of presence, conversations go deeper faster. Conflict de-escalates, trust accelerates, creativity increases because people feel safe to share bold ideas, right? So presence is really transformational. But another thing I heard over and over again in my interviews with women is that these women, they want to have time to develop their people, right? But they are in back-to-back meetings. They have deadlines of their own that they are struggling to hit, KPIs of their own that are super ambitious. And so while the desire is there, it is really, really challenging because of this experience of a lack of time. So the third aspect of presence that we're going to talk about is presence with self, which is of course where everything begins and ends. So we have to start at the root, which is your ability to be present with others begins with your ability to be present with yourself. And most of us, especially women who have spent years pushing, performing, and perfecting, are deeply disconnected from that. I know I most certainly was. In my 20s, I was so out of my body that had you asked me, where do you feel stress in your body? I would have no answer. I'd be like, what are you smoking? And maybe, can I have some of that? Right? It's not a character flaw, it is a survival pattern. So when we've been living in overdrive, we start outsourcing our attention to the demands, the roles, the doing, and we lose contact with our own inner world. But here's what I want to remind you of today, which is that your body, your whole system, is more technologically advanced than anything outside of you. Just thinking about ourselves physically, in the womb, if you're a woman, your body has the ability to take a single fertilized cell and create a human made over 37 trillion cells, all coordinated, intelligent, and alive. Um, these five senses that we have, that we learned about in school, experts are now saying humans have 30 or more senses. Things like balance, spatial orientation, internal awareness, like when you're hungry or anxious. Your body is a living, feeling, sensing instrument, and it is trying to talk to you all of the time. But to hear it, we have got to be present. But we're distracted, right? Because our attention has been hijacked by everything around us. And reclaiming presence really starts by turning your attention inward, not in a performative way, but just a deeply attuned one. Because before we can truly attune to our kids or lead with grounded empathy at work, we have got to be in contact with ourselves. Presence with self is the foundation of presence everywhere else. When you begin to direct your attention inward, right, to feel what you feel, to sense what your body is saying, you begin to reestablish trust with yourself. That's what makes you more attuned as a parent, a more intuitive leader, and a more powerful creator. Because how you lead yourself is, of course, how you lead everything and everyone. So, we're going to very soon jump into how to increase presence and that skill of attention. But I want to first address two major misconceptions that I have come across when it comes to this concept of presence and attention. So, this first one is a huge one, which is the idea that the reason why we can't be present is because we don't have enough time. So many women said, if only I could have 3 more hours in the day, or if only I could work part time. And first of all, this is so legit. This is so real. And I have a confession to make, an embarrassing one, which is I have said before, we all have the same hours in the day. And I'm going to eat those words right now because that just simply is not true. The me who had three in diapers and a crazy job did not have the same amount of time as the me now who has two 7 year olds and an 8 year old and works for myself. So if you are strapped for time, I so see you. I so believe you. And what you're experiencing is so real. And when I was the me who had three in diapers and pretty much no time to pee, I had a major revelation, which was the turning point for me. And it was this: I was letting everybody else, my boss, my kids, my partner, the dishes, my work email, decide what to do with my time and my attention rather than myself, right? So I was so busy saying, I have to respond to this email, I have to do this chore and this and that, that everything else external was controlling where I was placing my time. So paying attention is really about personal power, right? Regaining the ability to direct your attention according to your values and what's important to you, you deciding where to shine your flashlight rather than letting the world pull your mind in all of these different directions. And we'll talk about how to shift that in a bit. The second major misconception that I want to address is that if we want to be successful, if we want to have an impact, it's all about doing. But this simply is not the case. So I get it. There are 1.3 million things to do. And for so many high functioning women, that to do list energy becomes, it's just our default state. But here is the thing. We are human beings. Literally, the word being is in the name. We are not human doings, right? And so our state of being, whether we're grounded or stressed, present or fragmented, will directly shape what we do, how we lead, how we parent, and how we show up. So if we're doing from stress and urgency or people pleasing, that the result's going to carry that energy. We might be doing a lot. That doesn't mean we're accomplishing anything or having an actual impact. We're just going, going, going. But if we are able to really hone in on our intention and live more intentionally so that we're doing from presence, from clarity of what it is that we care about, that we value, from alignment, then the results are going to change. We're going to have more impact and we're going to do less. And it's going to be a dramatic shift. So, what that means is we need to pay as much attention to our state of being as to what we're doing. You want to think of it as a yin and a yang, right? Both aspects are essential, but most of us are just overdeveloped in doing and very undernourished in the being. And that's why presence matters. So, creating a small sanctuary of calm inside, it doesn't have to be elaborate, right? Taking a few minutes in the morning to be still is going to give you access to a steadier place to operate from. And from that place, you are going to be able to hear what your child is really saying underneath those words, underneath screaming, I hate you, right? You're going to be able to really feel the subtext of what it is your colleague needs or what your boss is really trying to say. We can respond with clarity instead of reactivity. Um, Being is not going to replace doing. Of course, we have to take action, but it's going to refine it so that action really has the impact we want it to have instead of us just spinning our wheels and exhausting ourselves. So, we're going to shift now to talk about some strategies that will help you redirect attention and build that presence that I know we all want more of. As a reminder, presence and our ability to pay attention is a skill. So, what are we going to do? We're going to learn how to build that skill. And we are going to learn how to do that both with some strategies in the moment, but also how to practice so that we can, just like lifting, a weight at a gym is going to strengthen your muscles, practicing some of these mindfulness and present techniques are going to help you shift into that as your default mode. Be more present more often. So, the first one I'm going to offer is really simple, and it is to slow down. So, literally slowing down to do simple things. And I'm going to give you an example. I used to wash my face like ferociously. Like I would get the soap on my hands, I'd rub it together, I'd be like viciously scrubbing my face, quick splash water on, quick wipe a towel off. And I remember back in college watching one of my friends wash her face and she like waited for the water to get warm, then gently scrubbed it. And at the time I was like, what is this chick doing? But now I get it. Now I just wash my face and kind of give myself a little face massage. This is building that muscle of presence, right? I'm practicing presence, feeling like the soap and my hands on my skin. It is lowering cortisol levels. And guess what? In reality, it takes the exact same amount of time. So this is just an example, right? But I know, and my kids, I know rushing creates anxiety, but my default mode is like, let's go, go, go. But you know what? That anxiety actually gives them an emotional reaction and then things take longer. If we can just find moments to slow down, it is going to increase that presence. So the second strategy is to raise our awareness, or in other words, to use metacognition, which is a simple way of saying watching our own thoughts. So when our mind is racing, I know most certainly for me, it's like I am one with the thoughts and the emotions, right? I'm so absorbed in them. We can get so absorbed in them that it feels like we are our thoughts and emotions. But in reality, we are the observer of them. And so I think of it like this. If our life is a play, right, we are stepping out of the actor role momentarily into the director role, which means that a few things. One, it means that we are not our thoughts and emotions. And so now we have more control over our thoughts and emotions. And it means we can call the shots. So it's that concept of between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is your power to choose something else. When we are able to, again, detach from our thoughts and emotions and look at them objectively, that is creating that space to then choose to refocus our attention on something else, choose to be present. So I'm going to share very specific steps with this. So many women struggle with that constant mental chatter, as do I, typically when I'm lying in bed, but also throughout the day. And so, using awareness, here are steps to deal with this. So, step one is notice it. Oh, I have a lot of mental chatter right now. Step two, give yourself some compassion. That totally makes sense. You have a lot of mental chatter right now. There's so much going on for you. Step three, find where it is in the body. Gosh, I'm really clenching my teeth right now, right? Sometimes just that awareness is enough to soften the thoughts and to bring you back to the present. Sometimes a redirect makes sense, right? So, back to my example of yesterday when my daughter was brushing her teeth and going on, and I had reached for my phone. I did reach for my phone subconsciously, open it up, but almost instantly, I was able to step out of that trance of being on my phone to notice what I was doing, right? And because of that, I put my phone down and I redirected my attention to my kid. And so this is important because, yes, my daughter saw me get on my phone, but she also saw me put my phone down, make a repair. I'm sorry, I didn't want to be on my phone, and then redirect my attention to her, right? And our kids don't need perfection. But that watching, she got to see the full human experience of me doing that, and knew that I was still prioritizing her, that I chose to attune to her. And what's interesting about this is that the more I really pay attention to her, right, her stories, her little idiosyncrasies as she was getting ready, it really wasn't boring, right? I could delight in her. So the third strategy is probably the toughest for me, and that is to sit with the hard stuff. So this builds that muscle of not trying to escape or distract or numb out from what is there. So this, doesn't sound great. It is more interesting to just keep doing and not to sit. But ultimately, if we don't sit with what's there, it's going to build in our body. And over time, we become disconnected from ourselves, and it does manifest in things like physical illness. So, and it takes away from our authenticity, right? And when we armor up with distraction, it also blocks out all of the good stuff. So, it is important that we build a muscle of not trying to escape the hard stuff, of sitting with it, with the boredom. And an example of this is when I was outlining this podcast, I received a text that was just, it like made my belly flop. I was like, oh. And so I replied, and at first I jumped right back in. I was like, I have to get this. But then I said, wait a second. And I paused and I allowed myself to feel this discomfort. It was a physical reaction in my body, kind of like a wave of anxiety that went through me. And I just sat with it, and then it went away. Now, this took all of 5 extra seconds to sit here and be present with that emotion. It was uncomfortable, but what it did was it let me process that stress so it wouldn't store up in my body, right? It then increased my ability to be present with discomfort, no matter where it is, right? Whether it's sitting and holding space for a tantrum with my child or an uncomfortable conversation at work, right? That is building that skill of sitting with discomfort that is really critical. So, those are some in the moment practices and strategies you can use. And while in the moment practices are great, essential really. It's also important to put a practice into place to really build the muscle of being able to be present. So, I'm going to share a few. The first one I'm going to share is Dr. Jha's 12-minute practice called Mindfulness as Mental Armor. So, in her research with military and healthcare workers, Dr. Amishi Jha, she's the one who came up with the analogy of the flashlight as your attention, found that 12 minutes of mindfulness per day was really the sweet spot for building up that ability to focus your attention and be present. She found that after 4 weeks, people had stronger focus, less mind wandering, better working memory, lower emotional reactivity. And so here's the practice. You sit up still and upright. You bring attention to your breath, just noticing it in and out, wherever you want to feel it on your nostrils, the heat of your breath. And when your mind wanders, and it will definitely wander, just gently bring it back. So she emphasized this is not about clearing your mind. It is just about noticing when it drifts and choosing to come back, right? That's like literally the rep for the muscle, noticing when it drifts and bringing it back to the present. And she calls this mental armor because it's protective against all of these things that can pull us out of the present moment. Um, but for those of you who are like, that's just doing too much, I don't have 12 minutes a day. That was me too. Now I have a meditation practice, but originally this was a long build to this, y'all. So I want to offer some alternatives. My journey did not start with stillness. It actually started with connecting the mind to the body, because as I shared, for a long time in my 20s, I was so disconnected from my body. I couldn't have even told you where in my body I felt anxiety. And so for me, the gateway to this was really yoga, right? This yoking of mind and body. But it doesn't have to be a whole yoga class. It can simply be stretching and paying attention. It could be walking and noticing the breeze on your skin. So anything where you're beginning to connect your thoughts with your body experience, right? When you're beginning to yoke or put together the mind and the body is really a great first step if you are new to all of this. Now, the next step, and often more challenging for folks, is this. Can you sit with yourself in stillness? And I'm talking no phone, no music, no fixing, just being with yourself. This was really when I had three in diapers, I was at rock bottom. I started doing this for 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes of silence a day, and no purpose behind it, just sat in silence. And this small act, choosing to just stay with myself, whatever came up, is where I really began to return to myself and where presence with self really started. And so, this ability to be still with yourself, again, this was just 5 minutes a day that I started doing this, is the foundation for being present with your kids, for showing up fully at work, and for living and leading from real authenticity. Because presence with self is how you get to know yourself. And when you know yourself, you are able to be your authentic self, not your programming. It's you choosing to inhabit your life and not just perform in it or be at the whim of your calendar or the demands and needs of others. So, in closing, I want to leave you with a few reminders today. The first is that presence is not a moral trait, right? That means we don't need to feel guilty about it. It's not something that is making us a good person or a bad person. It is quite simply a skill. And like any skill, it can be built. Second, your ability to be present with others begins with your presence to yourself. That's the foundation for attuned parenting, for clear leadership, for any meaningful connection and authenticity. Third, your attention is your power. So directing it intentionally rather than letting the world scatter it, right? Your emails, your partner, your kids, your chores is one of the most radical acts of personal sovereignty or supreme power over your life and how you want to live it that you have. This is not about being perfect, right? You don't need to sit on a mountaintop and meditate for hours. You don't need to be 100% present with your kids all of the time. But you can start by practicing presence with simple things, washing your face slowly, noticing the breeze on your skin, by taking 5 silent minutes at the start or end of each day, right? These micro moments of presence are super small, but they're going to build resilience. They're going to build your ability to be present, and they really, really have the power to change everything. So, thank you for choosing to pay attention today. Thank you for choosing to be here with me and yourself. Before we wrap up today, I want to speak directly to those of you who are just really in it right now. I remember when I had, the three in diapers and this crazy job, I was so burned out and overwhelmed that I remember thinking, nobody gets what it's like to be me right now, not even my husband. Everyone would give me all this advice, but it felt very disconnected from the reality that I was living in. I didn't really need more tips. I really needed space and someone to really see me and to find clarity in the middle of all of the chaos. And if any part of that resonates with you, if you're navigating a season where you're holding so much for everyone else and you feel like you're starting to forget what you even want, I want to offer you a free 30-minute coaching call with me to create more time, energy, and presence without burning out. So, on this call, we'll just gently explore what you really want professionally and personally beneath all that pressure and guilt and expectations. What patterns and pressures or beliefs might be keeping you unknowingly stuck where you are? Um, what might be missing from your current approach? Some new possibilities for leading and working and living with more presence and impact without sacrificing your success or your time with your family, and most of all, clarity on your next step. So, if that sounds like something that would be supportive of you right now, you can sign up at www.leaduphealth.com. You can just scroll and click schedule your free consultation, and I'll also include the link in the show notes. I would love to support you. And with that, thank you for being here, for showing up for yourself, and for choosing presence, even if it's just one small moment at a time. Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and keep burning beautiful loves. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this episode sparked something in you, subscribe, and I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to rate and review the show. It is the most powerful way to help other women find it. And if you know someone who is struggling or on the edge of burnout or simply wants to lead from wholeness, send this their way. Let's grow this movement together. To get exclusive insights, tools, and behind-the-scenes support, join the HERS Insider List at www.leaduphealth.com. And if you're ready to explore working together, whether through coaching or consulting, you can book a free consultation right from the site. Until next time, burn beautiful loves.